DiJonai Carrington, after clotheslining Sophie Cunningham, running into the locker room, screaming, "That's white privilege!" Then tweeting 8/23, threatening Sophie Cunningham and the Indiana Fever. DiJonai Carrington now comes out and clarifies what she means when she says white privilege for the Indiana.
2 minutes left in the first quarter. DiJonai Carrington just slapped the dog shit out of Sophie Cunningham. Sophie pops up. She's obviously upset. DiJonai says, "Try me." And then look at Stephanie White. Look at her face. Look. She's mad as shit. Now, number one, this is obviously a flagrant 2. It just is. By the letter of the law, you got to call a flagrant 2. We all know
the WNBA is currently collapsing into pure, unadulterated chaos. Right at the dead center of this explosion stands DiJonai Carrington. She is absolutely fuming, completely isolated, and watching her entire career implode in real time. What started as a bone-chilling, violent clothesline on Sophie Cunningham has now escalated into the single most dangerous scandal in women's basketball history. Carrington didn't just throw a dirty forearm straight to Cunningham's face and draw blood. She fled straight to the locker room, grabbed her phone, and dropped a nuclear 2-word tweet, "white privilege," that instantly sparked a full-scale sports race war. But Carrington never expected what came next. She thought her allies would shield her. She thought the league would stay silent like they always do. Instead, the WNBA turned its back on her with terrifying velocity. Former teammates are publicly celebrating her downfall, top head coaches are refusing to defend her, and prominent national analysts are systematically tearing down her excuses. Carrington is backed into a corner, locked in a ferocious, emotional breakdown behind closed doors as the league she fought so hard to conquer prepares to completely erase her. And the most shocking part? The nightmare is only just beginning. To truly understand the atomic explosion taking place inside the WNBA right now, you have to look at the simmering hatred and toxic jealousy that has been poisoning these locker rooms for months. This was never just about a single basketball game, and it certainly wasn't just a random physical foul on the court. The boiling dynamic between DiJonai Carrington and Sophie Cunningham is deeply rooted in a fierce, ideological war that has been quietly dividing players, coaches, and front offices across the entire league. Cunningham, who fans and critics alike have dubbed MAGA Barbie, has fearlessly transformed herself into one of the most outspoken, polarizing figures in all of professional sports. She stood up on global platforms to defend women's sports, vocally championed traditional values, and repeatedly put her own safety on the line by calling out the brutal, unchecked physical targeted violence happening across the hardwood. More than anyone else, Cunningham stepped into the firing line as an unapologetic, fiercely aggressive protector of her Indiana Fever teammate, Caitlin Clark. Time and time again, Cunningham stood in front of cameras and exposed the league's darkest secret, that veteran players were secretly orchestrating targeted hits, plotting in their own locker rooms to physically break the new generation of superstars who are bringing unprecedented fame, money, and global eyes to the sport. That fearless whistleblowing made Cunningham the ultimate target on every opponent's hit list. And standing directly on the other side of that ideological battleground was DiJonai Carrington, a fierce, hyper-aggressive competitor carrying a massive chip on her shoulder and a long, documented history of brutal, borderline violent plays against the league's most high-profile players. Carrington had already built a terrifying reputation across the league for unhinged physical aggression, from eye-gouging incidents to pulling hair and executing dangerous, reckless chase-down hits from behind. Inside the locker rooms, the air was thick with resentment. While Clark, Cunningham, and the Fever were packing out historic NBA-sized arenas, breaking all-time viewership records, and pulling in multi-million-dollar endorsement deals, legacy players like Carrington felt completely overshadowed, bitter, and pushed into the background. The psychological tension reached a dangerous boiling point. Every single possession between these two factions felt like a ticking time bomb waiting for a spark. Carrington wasn't just competing for a win. She was harboring a deep, personal vendetta against everything Cunningham and the Fever represented. She viewed Cunningham's massive rise and outspoken protection of Clark not as basketball grit, but as an intolerable threat to her own standing in the league. The hatred wasn't just growing, it was festering, feeding on social media outrage, locker room whispers, and intense personal animosity. The entire WNBA hierarchy was sitting on a powder keg of political tension, racial friction, and raw jealousy. All it needed was one fatal moment of madness on the court to trigger an absolute, unprecedented nuclear disaster. The ticking time bomb finally detonated with catastrophic force with 2 minutes left in the first quarter. Sophie Cunningham was sprinting down the floor on a lightning-fast break, flying up for what should have been an effortless, routine layup. But DiJonai Carrington wasn't chasing down the play to block the ball. She was hunting a target. In a moment of pure, unhinged violence, Carrington launched herself into the air, swinging her forearms straight across Cunningham's neck and face in a terrifying, heavy clothesline. The sickening impact echoed through the arena as Cunningham slammed violently onto the hardwood, her face bloodied and her body contorted in a terrifying fall. The crowd gasped in utter horror. But instead of showing an ounce of remorse, Carrington stood over Cunningham's battered body, cold-bloodedly snarling, "Try me." Cunningham popped up, her eyes blazing with raw fury, barely restrained by teammates and officials as chaos completely consumed the floor. Referees rushed to the monitors, reviewing the jaw-dropping footage in disbelief. The wind-up, the malicious contact to the head, the extreme risk of severe injury. It checked every single box of an undeniable flagrant 2. Carrington was instantly slapped with an automatic ejection and ordered off the court. Then came the first shocking twist that sent shockwaves straight through the sports world. As Carrington walked off the floor under a barrage of deafening boos, she didn't hide in shame. She stormed directly into the locker room, grabbed her phone with adrenaline still pumping through her veins, and fired off a nuclear 2-word tweet aimed directly at the fever. White privilege. Within seconds, the internet combusted into absolute madness. Carrington had just weaponized race in the middle of an active game to cover up an indefensible, violent assault on live TV. But her massive gamble backfired instantly in a way she never saw coming. Instead of rallying the league around her, Carrington's reckless tweet ignited an unprecedented wave of fury from national sports commentators, analysts, and fans alike. Former NFL star Emmanuel Acho went on national television and completely ripped Carrington to shreds, calling her tweet utterly ignorant, asinine, and a pathetic attempt to play the victim card after drawing blood on the court. Acho exposed the brutal truth. The ejection had zero to do with skin color and everything to do with Carrington swinging a deadly forearm at a defenseless player's head. But instead of backing down, Carrington made a desperate, terrifyingly arrogant move. She publicly fired back at Acho, bragging about her elite university education, demanding he exercise critical thinking, and claiming she never meant the foul itself was white privilege. She tried to gaslight the entire world into believing her tweet had nothing to do with the violent hit that happened seconds earlier. The public saw right through the manipulation, and Carrington was left standing alone, watching her calculated narrative crumble into complete, disgraceful ruins. As the public backlash reached a fever pitch, Carrington believed her inner circle and league figures would step up to shield her from the brutal media storm. But what happened next behind closed doors was a betrayal so swift and calculated, it left Carrington completely paralyzed with rage. The WNBA hierarchy, terrified of losing millions in corporate sponsorships and alienating their rapidly growing global fanbase, decided they could no longer protect her. Executive meetings were held in absolute secrecy, with high-ranking league officials realizing that Carrington's unhinged actions had crossed a dangerous red line. Then came the second major, mind-blowing twist that completely shattered Carrington's world. It wasn't just the media or conservative critics coming for her, it was her own peer group and coaching ranks turning the knife. Inside the locker rooms across the league, former teammates and prominent figures began openly defecting. Sydney Colson, a respected league veteran who had previously shared a locker room with Cunningham, took to social media and publicly celebrated the violent hit, broadcasting her joy over Cunningham getting clobbered on national television. It was a terrifying look into the toxic, fractured state of the WNBA's culture. But the ultimate dagger to Carrington's heart came from an even more shocking source. Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White. When reporters pressed White to aggressively defend her own bloody, battered star player, White delivered a cold, surprisingly soft response. Instead of demanding Carrington's immediate, multi-game suspension, White casually brushed off the severity of the next strike, rationalizing that Carrington was just competing hard and that no one should get an easy layup against her. Carrington felt an initial surge of twisted triumph hearing a rival head coach downplay the violence. But that illusion was instantly pulverized when the true motive behind the league's quiet maneuverings came to light. Leaked reports from inside front offices revealed that coaches and executives weren't defending Carrington at all. They were actively distancing the entire league from her personal political war. They viewed her as an unpredictable, volatile liability who was actively sabotaging the multi-million-dollar financial windfall driven by Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham. The realization hit Carrington like a freight train. She wasn't being protected. She was being systematically isolated and quietly marked for disposal. The very players she thought were her sisters in arms were either celebrating the toxic circus for clout or completely cutting ties to save their own endorsement deals. When Carrington confronted league representatives in a series of heated, emotionally charged phone calls, she was met with cold, corporate silence and stern warnings about impending league-wide disciplinary reviews. The psychological walls were rapidly closing in. Locked inside her private space, trembling with a volatile mix of fury and intense panic, Carrington realized her attempt to intellectualize a dirty fall had completely backfired. The WNBA machine was officially chewing her up and spitting her out. The fallout was no longer just a storm on social media. It became a full-blown toxic wildfire consuming Carrington's life, mental health, and professional stability. Within 48 hours of her explosive online back and forth, the backlash reached a terrifying crescendo. Mainstream media networks, sports talk radio, and viral internet commentators dissected her every word, analyzing the slow-motion footage of the bloody hit alongside her arrogant tweets. Carrington was transformed overnight into the single most vilified athlete in North American sports. Corporate sponsors began quietly pulling back, removing her image from promotional campaigns and freezing pending endorsement negotiations. Every notification on her phone delivered a fresh wave of public outrage, death threats, and ruthless ridicule. Behind closed doors, Carrington was deteriorating rapidly under the crushing weight of the emotional pressure. The bravado she had displayed on social media, boasting about her top-tier university education and lecturing national analysts on critical thinking, completely evaporated into pure, unadulterated panic. Witnesses inside the team facilities reported hearing intense, scream-filled confrontations between Carrington, her agents, and team management. Her representatives desperately begged her to issue a formal, polished apology to de-escalate the crisis. But Carrington, fueled by raw anger and deep-seated pride, vehemently refused to back down. She felt deeply betrayed, repeatedly shouting that she was being unfairly targeted, silenced, and scapegoated by a league that was selling out its culture for television ratings and new corporate money. Meanwhile, Sophie Cunningham became the center of massive national sympathy and conservative media praise. Cunningham leaned directly into the narrative, appearing on high-profile platforms to highlight the extreme physical double standards and relentless hostility white conservative players were facing inside the WNBA. The contrast was absolute. While Cunningham's brand skyrocketed with massive new follower surges and praise for her resilience, Carrington was watching her personal reputation dissolve into total ruin. Inside the locker room, the atmosphere around Carrington turned ice-cold and unbearable. Teammates who once joked with her were now maintaining a distant, awkward silence, terrified that associating with her radioactive public persona would destroy their own careers and sponsorship deals. The camaraderie had completely dissolved, replaced by uncomfortable stares and whisper campaigns in the hallways. Carrington felt like a ghost walking through her own facility, completely radioactive, intensely isolated, and deeply paranoid about who was leaking information to the press. Her attempt to ignite a cultural movement had instead trapped her in an emotional prison of her own making. The anger that had driven her on the court was now consuming her from the inside out, leaving her mentally exhausted, emotionally shattered, and desperately searching for a way out of a nightmare that was rapidly spinning out of her control. Just when Carrington thought she had hit absolute rock bottom, a devastating secret leaked from the highest halls of the WNBA front office, a revelation so explosive it turned this entire personal scandal into an unprecedented league corruption thriller. Confidential internal memos were leaked to top sports insiders, exposing that league officials had been conducting a secret, under-the-table investigation into locker room collusion across multiple franchises. The leaked documents delivered the ultimate, soul-crushing twist. Carrington's violent hit on Sophie Cunningham wasn't just a spontaneous moment of emotional madness on the court. Allegations surfaced that a private group chat, consisting of several veteran players across different rival teams, had been actively coordinating a physical hit list targeting the league's newest high-profile, record-breaking players, including Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham. The sinister goal? To use calculated, dirty physical intimidation to force these new fan favorites off the floor and regain control of the league's narrative and financial distribution. Carrington was allegedly handpicked to execute the first high-visibility strike, fully believing her tight-knit sisterhood of veteran players would have her back, amplify her social media defense, and protect her from league consequences. Instead, the moment the national media firestorm erupted and corporate sponsors threatened to pull billions in broadcast deals, those exact same veteran players in the group chat completely scrubbed their phones, threw Carrington to the wolves, and cut off all communication with her. She hadn't just been betrayed, she had been used as a disposable pawn in a shadowy, failed locker room coup. When Carrington discovered that her closest allies had betrayed her to save their own multi-million-dollar contracts, her remaining mental fortitude completely shattered. She was left holding the entire fall for a conspiracy that went far deeper than a single clothesline foul. Now, backed into an absolute corner with her contract on the verge of being terminated and a potential lifetime league ban hanging over her head, Carrington faces a terrifying, career-ending ultimatum. Sources close to the situation reveal that Carrington is currently preparing to break her silence in a live, unscripted national broadcast, threatening to leak the entire contents of that private group chat, expose every single player and coach involved in the secret hit list, and burn the WNBA's billion-dollar illusion to the ground. As the league scrambles behind the scenes to file legal injunctions and silence her before she goes live, Carrington stands on the absolute edge of the precipice. Will she keep taking the fall in disgraceful silence, or is she about to push the detonator and destroy the entire WNBA forever? The WNBA is officially standing at a historic, irreversible crossroad. What started as a physical fall on the hardwood has spiraled into an explosive war over player culture, media double standards, locker room politics, and truth. DiJonai Carrington is trapped in a corner, isolated, fuming, and threatening to tear down the league's entire multi-million-dollar image. Now, the absolute biggest question falls on you, the fans. Was Carrington's hard foul on Sophie Cunningham just an aggressive basketball play blown out of proportion, or did she intentionally cross a line and use social media to avoid accountability? And more importantly, is the WNBA right to distance itself from this chaotic storm, or are they turning their backs on one of their own? Drop your thoughts, hot takes, and theories in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with every sports fan you know, and subscribe to the channel for the ultimate breakdowns on all things WNBA. We will see you in the next one.